Why people attach to you without realizing. Carl Jung's 2 core reasons. Have you ever wondered why certain people are inexplicably drawn to you? Why they seek your attention, your approval, your energy, often without even realizing they're doing it? There's something happening beneath the surface, a powerful psychological phenomenon that Carl Jung uncovered decades ago, yet most people have never heard about it. This isn't just casual attraction. This is about the unconscious forces that create deep, often obsessive attachments. Forces that can either enrich your relationships or destroy them completely. I'm about to reveal Jung's 2 fundamental psychological mechanisms that explain why people become attached to you without even understanding why. And I guarantee that by the end of this video, you'll never look at your relationships the same way again. What if I told you that right now, someone in your life is attached to you not for who you truly are, but for who they desperately need you to be? Stay with me because what I'm about to share might explain some of the most confusing relationships you've ever had. Before we dive deeper, if you're fascinated by the hidden dynamics of human connection and want to understand your relationships on a deeper level, make sure you subscribe to this channel. We explore the most profound Jungian concepts and how they shape our everyday connections. Let me ask you this, have you ever felt that someone was intensely drawn to you almost magnetically and you couldn't figure out why? Or perhaps you've been the one inexplicably pulled towards someone else. What you experienced wasn't just chemistry, it was something far more powerful that Jung identified as the cornerstone of human attachment. These unconscious pulls create the strongest bonds between people, but they can also lead to the most devastating heartbreaks when we don't understand them. Today you'll learn to recognize when these forces are at play in your own life. So what are Jung's 2 core reasons? They're called projection and the shadow, and they work in tandem with something called the collective unconscious. But to truly understand how they create attachments without conscious awareness, we need to start at the beginning. The most fascinating aspect of Jungian psychology is how it reveals that what we think we know about ourselves and others is often just the tip of the iceberg. The real motivations lie beneath, in the shadowy depths of our unconscious minds. Before we can understand why people become attached to you without realizing it, we need to grasp one of Jung's most revolutionary concepts: the collective unconscious. Unlike Freud, who focused primarily on personal experiences, Jung believed we all share a deeper layer of unconscious material, a psychological inheritance as real as our biological one. Think of the collective unconscious as humanity's shared psychological foundation. It contains what Jung called archetypes, universal patterns and images that appear across all cultures throughout history. These archetypes are like psychological templates hardwired into our minds. When someone meets you for the first time, they're not just meeting an individual, they're encountering a canvas onto which they project these powerful archetypal energies. This is crucial to understanding unconscious attachment. The most relevant archetypes for understanding attachment include the mother, the father, the hero, the wise one, the lover, and the shadow. Each carries tremendous emotional and psychological energy. When someone unconsciously sees one of these archetypes in you, the attachment that forms isn't really about you at all. It's about the archetype you've come to represent in their unconscious mind. Have you ever had someone respond to you with an emotional intensity that seemed completely out of proportion? As if they were reacting to someone else entirely? That's exactly what was happening. They were responding to an archetypal projection, not the real you. This explains why sometimes people become deeply attached to someone they barely know. The attachment forms instantly and powerfully because it's not based on slowly getting to know the real person. It's based on an immediate recognition of an archetypal pattern that resonates with something deep in their unconscious. For example, if someone had a distant father, they might unconsciously project the father archetype onto an older mentor figure and develop an intense attachment that seems inexplicable on the surface. The relationship feels significant because it's activating ancient psychological patterns. The most fascinating part? Neither person is typically aware this is happening. The person projecting feels a special connection they can't explain, while the recipient often feels confused by the intensity of the other's interest or emotional responses. But the collective unconscious and archetypes are just the foundation. Now, let's explore Jung's first core reason people attach to you without realizing: projection, the psychological mechanism that bridges your external appearance and someone's internal world. Projection is the first and perhaps most powerful reason people unconsciously attach to you, and understanding it will transform how you see your relationships. Jung defined projection as an unconscious psychological mechanism where we attribute our own unacknowledged qualities, emotions, or traits to someone else. In simpler terms, we see in others what we cannot or will not see in ourselves. But projection isn't just about negative qualities, we also project our unrealized potential, our deepest desires, and our ideal self onto others. Here's where it gets fascinating. When someone projects significant aspects of themselves onto you, they develop an attachment that feels profound and meaningful. But they're not attaching to you, they're attaching to parts of themselves they've disowned and now see in you. Think about it this way: have you ever met someone and felt an immediate, powerful connection as if you'd known them forever? Or perhaps someone has felt that way about you. That intense familiarity is often projection at work. What feels like recognition of another person is actually recognition of disowned parts of ourselves. There are several types of projections that create powerful attachments. First, there's the projection of the ideal self. When someone has qualities you deeply admire but haven't developed in yourself, you may project your potential onto them. The attachment forms because, unconsciously, you're trying to reclaim those qualities through the relationship. Second, there's the projection of the anima or animus. Jung believed that men carry a feminine inner personality, the anima, and women carry a masculine inner personality, the animus. When we encounter someone who matches our inner opposite gender energy, we often project this inner figure onto them, creating an immediate and powerful attachment that feels like destiny. Think about your strongest attractions or attachments. Can you identify what qualities in those people mirror undeveloped aspects of yourself? This awareness alone can be transformative for understanding your relationship patterns. Third, there's the projection of parental figures. If your relationship with a parent was unresolved or incomplete, you may unconsciously seek people who remind you of that parent and project your unmet needs onto them. This creates attachments that are actually attempts to heal childhood wounds. The most important thing to understand about projection is that it happens completely outside of conscious awareness. The person projecting onto you feels absolutely certain that the qualities they see in you are objectively there. They have no idea they're seeing themselves reflected back. This is why people can become so devastated when the illusion eventually breaks. When they realize you're not actually the person they projected you to be, it's not just disappointing, it can feel like a profound betrayal, even though you never claimed to be what they imagined. Now that you understand what projection is, let's explore exactly how it creates such powerful attachments without people realizing it's happening. The process follows a fascinating psychological pattern that Jung documented throughout his career. When someone projects significant aspects of themselves onto you, they experience what Jung called emotional possession. The projected content carries such emotional charge that they become, in a sense, possessed by their own projection. This creates an almost magnetic pull toward you that they can't explain rationally. Here's where it gets even more interesting. These projections are often complementary to the person's conscious identity. Jung called this compensation. If someone consciously identifies as rational and controlled, they may project their spontaneous, emotional side onto you. If they see themselves as ordinary, they might project their extraordinary potential onto you. This explains why we're often attracted to people who seem to embody qualities we lack. The banker falls for the artist. The shy person admires the outgoing one. The disciplined individual is drawn to the free spirit. We're unconsciously seeking psychological wholeness through these attachments. But here's the crucial insight. The intensity of the attachment is directly proportional to the importance of what's being projected. When someone projects their unlived potential, their deepest values, or their most suppressed qualities onto you, the attachment can become overwhelming and compulsive. This is why some people become attached to you after minimal interaction. They're not responding to the actual time spent together, they're responding to the massive psychological energy contained in their projection. Consider this: have you ever had someone become intensely attached to you after just a few meetings? Or perhaps you've experienced that immediate, powerful pull toward someone else? What you might have been experiencing wasn't love at first sight, but projection at first sight. The most common projections that create attachments include the savior projection, when someone sees you as the person who will rescue them from their problems or pain. The soulmate projection, when someone projects their anima/animus onto you, creating the feeling of destined connection. The potential projection, when someone sees in you the person they could become but fear they never will. The parental projection, when someone unconsciously sees you as a mother or father figure who will provide what their parents couldn't. Each of these projections creates a different quality of attachment, but they all share one thing in common: they're not actually about you. They're about the projector's internal psychological landscape. Understanding this doesn't mean these attachments aren't real or meaningful. Jung believed that projections, when consciously understood and integrated, could actually lead to genuine connection and growth. But first, both people need to recognize what's happening. Now let's make this practical. How can you tell when someone is projecting onto you versus seeing the real you? And how can you recognize when you're projecting onto others? These are crucial questions if you want to build authentic relationships. Here are the telltale signs that someone is attaching to you through projection. First, watch for idealizing behavior. When someone puts you on a pedestal, attributing qualities to you that seem exaggerated or that you don't fully recognize in yourself, projection is likely at work. They're not seeing you, they're seeing their own potential reflected back at them. Second, notice emotional intensity that seems disproportionate to your actual shared history. When someone becomes deeply emotionally invested in you after relatively brief contact, they're likely projecting significant psychological material onto you. Third, pay attention to persistent misunderstandings where someone seems convinced you think, feel, or intend things that don't align with your actual experience. This often indicates they're projecting their own thoughts and feelings onto you. Fourth, be alert to relationship patterns that feel familiar. If you repeatedly attract people who relate to you in similar ways, perhaps always seeing you as the strong one, the caretaker, or the authority, you may be unconsciously inviting certain projections through your behavior or presentation. Remember, we all project. The question isn't whether projections are happening in your relationships, it's whether you're aware of them. Consciousness is the key to transformation. Take a moment to think about your closest relationships. Can you identify projections that might be operating? What aspects of yourself might you be seeing in others? This kind of self-reflection is exactly what Jung advocated as the path to psychological wholeness. When you recognize that someone is attaching to you through projection, you have several options. You can gently help them see the projection by not fulfilling the unconscious role they've assigned you. You can directly discuss what you notice happening. Or, if the projection is creating an unhealthy dynamic, you might need to create distance. The most transformative approach, however, is to help the person reclaim their projection. This means encouraging them to develop in themselves the qualities they admire in you. As Jung said, everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves. Similarly, when you notice yourself becoming intensely attached to someone, ask yourself, what am I seeing in this person that I may need to develop in myself? This self-awareness is the beginning of psychological integration. Now let's turn to Jung's second core reason people attach to you without realizing: the shadow and its powerful role in creating unconscious attachments. We've explored projection, but now it's time to understand Jung's second core reason people unconsciously attach to you: the shadow. This concept is perhaps Jung's most profound contribution to understanding human relationships and the unconscious attachments that form within them. The shadow, in Jungian psychology, represents everything we refuse to acknowledge about ourselves. It contains the aspects of our personality that don't fit our self-image, our darker impulses, shameful desires, and qualities we consider unacceptable. But crucially, the shadow also contains positive qualities and potentials that we've rejected or never developed. Here's what makes the shadow so powerful in creating attachments. When we encounter someone who embodies significant elements of our shadow, whether positive or negative, we experience a reaction that Jung called fascination. This fascination feels like an irresistible pull toward the person, often accompanied by strong emotional reactions that seem out of proportion. This fascination occurs because, in that person, we're encountering parts of ourselves that carry enormous psychological energy precisely because they've been repressed. The more energy we've spent denying or suppressing aspects of ourselves, the more powerfully we'll react when we see those same aspects in others. Think about it this way: have you ever had an inexplicable negative reaction to someone you barely know? Or conversely, have you ever been inexplicably drawn to someone who represents something you've denied in yourself? These are shadow reactions, and they create some of the strongest unconscious attachments between people. The shadow works differently than ordinary projection because it carries a distinctive emotional charge. Shadow projections often involve a mixture of attraction and repulsion, fascination and fear, admiration and judgment. This emotional complexity is a hallmark of shadow dynamics. For example, someone who has repressed their own creativity might become deeply attached to an artistic friend, not just admiring them but almost needing to be around their creative energy. Or someone who denies their own anger might be drawn to people who express rage freely, simultaneously judging them while secretly envying their emotional freedom. What's fascinating is that our shadow attachments often reveal precisely what we need for psychological wholeness. The qualities that most strongly trigger us in others, whether positively or negatively, are often exactly what we need to integrate into our conscious personality. This is why shadow-based attachments, though often turbulent and challenging, contain tremendous potential for growth. When we become aware of our shadow projections, we gain access to disowned parts of ourselves that contain vital energy and potential. The shadow doesn't just create fleeting attractions. It forms some of the deepest and most transformative attachments in our lives. Let's explore exactly how this happens and why shadow-based connections are so compelling. When someone embodies significant elements of your shadow, the attachment that forms has a distinct quality that Jung called numinous. This term describes an emotional experience that feels charged with special energy or significance, almost magical or fated. This numinous quality explains why shadow-based attachments often feel destined or cosmically significant. There are 4 primary ways the shadow creates powerful attachments. First, through fascination with the forbidden. When someone expresses qualities you've forbidden in yourself, they become intensely interesting. This explains why the good girl might be drawn to the bad boy, or why the rigidly disciplined person might be fascinated by someone who lives spontaneously. The attachment forms because, through this person, you're vicariously experiencing disowned parts of yourself. Second, through the recognition of unlived potential. Your shadow contains not just what you've rejected, but what you've never allowed yourself to become. When you meet someone who embodies your unlived life, the attachment can be immediate and powerful. They represent the road not taken, the person you might have been. Third, through complementary shadows. Sometimes 2 people are drawn together because their shadows complement each other perfectly. One person expresses what the other represses. This creates relationships with powerful chemistry but also the potential for tremendous conflict as each person triggers the other's disowned material. Fourth, through shadow identification. Sometimes we're drawn to people who struggle with the same shadow elements we do. This creates a sense of deep understanding and acceptance, as each person recognizes their own struggles mirrored in the other. The most important thing to understand about shadow-based attachments is that they're not random. Your shadow doesn't attach to just anyone. It's drawn specifically to people who carry the psychological energy you've denied in yourself. This is why certain people seem to get under your skin, while others don't affect you at all. The stronger your emotional reaction, whether positive or negative, the more likely it is that your shadow is involved. The true power of understanding shadow attachments is that they reveal your path to wholeness. As Jung famously said, one does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. When you recognize that your strongest attachments often reveal your disowned self, you gain valuable insight into what you need to integrate for psychological completeness. Now that you understand how projection and the shadow create unconscious attachments, let's explore how to use this awareness for psychological growth and healthier relationships. Jung called this process integration, and it's the heart of his approach to personal development. Integration begins with recognition. When you find yourself powerfully drawn to someone, ask yourself, what qualities in this person am I most attracted to or repelled by? Might these qualities represent disowned aspects of myself? This simple question can lead to profound self-discovery. The goal isn't to eliminate projections or shadow attachments. That's impossible. Rather, the goal is to make them conscious. When you recognize that you're projecting onto someone, you can begin to reclaim those projections and develop those qualities in yourself. This process of reclaiming projections doesn't diminish your relationships. It transforms them. Instead of unconsciously using others as repositories for disowned parts of yourself, you can relate to them as whole individuals. This shift from projection to conscious relationship is what Jung called the withdrawal of projections. Similarly, integrating your shadow doesn't mean your attachments disappear. Instead, they become more conscious and therefore more genuine. You're no longer relating to others through the distorting lens of unacknowledged projections. The integration process involves several key steps. First, pay attention to your emotional reactions. When you feel disproportionately attracted to or repelled by someone, your shadow is likely involved. These strong reactions are invitations to self-knowledge. Second, examine the specific qualities that trigger your reactions. Ask yourself honestly whether you might possess these same qualities, even if they're expressed differently or remain potential rather than actual. Third, find ways to consciously develop the positive shadow qualities you've identified. If you're drawn to someone's creativity, for example, how might you express your own creative potential? If you admire someone's assertiveness, how might you become more appropriately assertive? Fourth, accept the aspects of your shadow that you've judged or rejected. This doesn't mean acting on every impulse, but rather acknowledging these aspects with compassion rather than denial. Jung believed this integration process was the central task of the second half of life. He called it individuation, becoming the unique, whole individual you were meant to be by integrating both conscious and unconscious aspects of your personality. The beauty of this approach is that as you integrate your shadow and reclaim your projections, your relationships naturally transform. You begin to see others more clearly and love them more authentically. Your attachments become based on genuine connection rather than psychological need. Now let's apply Jung's insights to your everyday relationships. Understanding projection and the shadow gives you powerful tools for navigating connections of all kinds, from romantic partnerships to friendships and family relationships. In romantic relationships, Jung's concepts explain why initial attraction is often so powerful yet so frequently misleading. That overwhelming feeling of having found your soulmate is typically anima/animus projection. You're encountering your inner opposite gender archetype embodied in another person. This doesn't mean the connection isn't meaningful. In fact, Jung believed these projections could be the beginning of profound relationships. But lasting love requires the gradual withdrawal of projections and the development of a relationship with the real person, not just your projection. For those already in committed relationships, understanding projection helps explain why conflicts often seem to revolve around the same issues. When you and your partner trigger each other's shadows repeatedly, you're actually being given opportunities to heal and integrate disowned aspects of yourselves. Rather than blaming your partner for triggering you, you can ask, what is this reaction showing me about myself? What might I need to acknowledge or develop? This transforms relationship conflicts from pointless power struggles into opportunities for mutual growth. In friendships, notice which friends bring out different aspects of your personality. Do certain friends connect you with qualities you don't normally express? This awareness can help you understand the psychological function these friendships serve and make them more consciously fulfilling. In family relationships, Jung's concepts are particularly revealing. Family members often carry heavy projections for each other, with parents projecting onto children and vice versa. Recognizing when you're relating to a family member through projection rather than seeing them clearly can transform these foundational relationships. In professional relationships, notice whether you tend to project authority onto leaders or mentors. Do you find yourself becoming irrationally intimidated by or defiant toward authority figures? These reactions often reveal unresolved issues with archetypal authority that originated in your relationship with your parents. The most practical application of Jung's insights is developing what he called active imagination, a process of dialoguing with your own projections and shadow elements. When you find yourself having a strong reaction to someone, try imagining a conversation with the quality they embody. What would your inner critic, inner child, or inner authority figure say if given a voice? This kind of psychological work doesn't just improve your relationships with others, it helps you develop a more integrated relationship with yourself. And ultimately, Jung believed that our outer relationships mirror our inner relationship with ourselves. By becoming more conscious of your projections and shadow elements, you create the foundation for authentic connection, relationships based on seeing and being seen, rather than unconscious psychological needs. We've journeyed deep into Carl Jung's understanding of unconscious attachment, exploring how projection and the shadow create connections that people often don't understand. Now, let's bring these insights together and consider their implications for your life. The fundamental truth Jung discovered is this: we attach to others not just for who they are, but for what they represent within our own psyches. Every significant relationship is, in part, a relationship with yourself, with disowned aspects of your personality seeking expression and integration. This doesn't diminish the value of your connections. On the contrary, it reveals their profound psychological purpose. Your attachments aren't random, they're guiding you toward wholeness by showing you what you need to acknowledge and develop within yourself. When someone attaches to you through projection, they're not seeing the real you, but neither are they seeing something completely fabricated. They're seeing possibilities, qualities that you may indeed possess, even if only as potential rather than fully developed traits. Similarly, when you find yourself powerfully drawn to someone, you're being shown aspects of yourself that seek recognition and expression. Your attachments are maps to your wholeness if you learn to read them correctly. Jung's vision wasn't to eliminate these psychological mechanisms but to make them conscious. The goal isn't to stop projecting entirely, that's impossible, but to project consciously with awareness of what you're doing. The true transformation comes when you begin to reclaim these projections, when you recognize that the qualities you admire or dislike in others are reflections of your own inner landscape. As you integrate these disowned aspects, your relationships become less about unconscious need and more about conscious connection. This is the journey Jung called individuation, becoming the complete, unique individual you were meant to be by integrating both conscious and unconscious elements of your personality. It's a lifelong process, but understanding unconscious attachment is a crucial step on this path. I want to leave you with a question for reflection. What relationship in your life carries the most emotional charge? Consider whether projection or shadow dynamics might be at play, and what this might reveal about aspects of yourself seeking integration. Remember, becoming aware of these unconscious processes doesn't make your connections less meaningful, it makes them more authentic. By recognizing the psychological dynamics at work in your relationships, you free yourself to love others for who they truly are, not just for what they represent in your inner world. If you found value in understanding these Jungian concepts, please subscribe to this channel for more insights into the depths of human connection. Hit the notification bell so you don't miss our next exploration of psychological dynamics that shape your relationships. And if you know someone who might benefit from understanding these unconscious attachment patterns, share this video with them. Sometimes, a single insight can transform a person's entire understanding of their relationships. Thank you for joining me on this journey into Jung's profound understanding of human connection. Until next time, remember that the most powerful forces in your relationships are often the ones you don't see, until you learn to look within. What unconscious attachments might be shaping your connections right now? The answer to that question could change everything about how you relate to yourself and others. I'll see you in the next video, where we'll continue exploring the hidden dynamics of human psychology.